Oh my God. It's still playing. My sister can hear the music and I can't, so. Is it over? Is it over? Is the music over?
Man. Yep, there you go.
Okay. Okay. Hello. Oh my God. This is episode 15. I swear to drunk, I'm not God. And we have a guest, and she's actually never been on this episode, and we're actually already kind of tipsy. We had a very interesting conversation before this whole thing happened, and we're not going to talk about any of that. But that explains why we're drunk. That explains why we're drunk. But we're chilling. We're vibing. It's good. Episode 15. Kirrah's here. My sister. Perkins.
Yo,
yes.
You're on the mic with Mike.
Bam, 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 bam. And she was supposed to be on the JFK episode.
But I was having a mental breakdown. Sorry.
She was feeling the feels. You know, shit gets weird.
I'm in the film industry.
You got to be able to, oh my God, we were just talking about boundaries. You got to be able to fucking say when enough is enough, and I'm not in the mood, and I'm not doing it. And that's what she did, and we didn't do it.
Sagittarius is not easy.
Yeah, that's Sagittarius with Sagittarian. And
beating my ass daily.
Okay. So today, this is episode 15. We're going to talk about the incredibly gruesome life and times of Carl Panzram, an absolute psychotic demon monster. I don't even know what else to call that. Like, I don't think there has been another human being on this planet that hated people more than Carl Panzram.
I feel like he had reason, though.
He did.
It was a lot going on.
He did. Carl Panzram was fucked. He was fucked up, and we're going to get into that today. Also, we are going to be talking about what we're drinking. So we're drinking a Dominican version of a Sidecar, which is not, but it's Hennessy Pure White Sidecar, because, you know, I came back from the Dominican. Thank you. I'm tanned. And it was great. I had a great time. 5 days. What? 5 days of loneliness. But it was incredibly nerve-wracking when I first got there, because it rained for the first 2 days, and then I spoke to the universe and I was like, yo, I need for this motherfucking sun to come out, or I'm going to shoot everyone on this resort. These are the options that you...
This is why I don't go to resorts.
I'm dealing with a lot.
This is why I go to where there's plenty of people and not just enclosed spaces.
Period. And I'm like sitting there, I'm like, yo. So so what's in the Sidecar? So the Sidecar is basically Cointreau. I never know if I'm pronouncing that right. Is it Cointreau? Cointreau? Cointreau.
I'm from the South Side.
Yeah, for sure. We are not from France.
I got nothing to offer.
Excuse me. I'm belching. We got Cointreau, an ounce of that, an ounce of lemon juice, and 2 ounces of Hennessy Pure White. If you have not been blessed with the cognac that is Hennessy Pure White, look at your life. Look at your choices. If there is any other reason to go to the Caribbean, it is to buy 6 bottles of Pure White and to help their economy. I only bought 3 bottles this time. Last time I bought 6. They actually did have 6 on sale for $4. I think it was like $4.14. And then I was like, I don't need 4 additional bottles.
I'm not going to lie to you. Last time I went to Mexico, I brought back like 8.
Oh, well, I didn't want to carry that either duty free, because I also wanted to buy like a giant bottle of Spanish rum, which I did. So I bought 3 bottles of Hennessy White. 2 of them are mine. 1 I gave to you. And then I bought a big ass bottle of spiced rum. And then I bought back some Barcelo for TV that I stole from my hotel. So that was free.
Let's hope your hotel doesn't listen to this.
Excuse me, Majestic Mirage. Do you listen to I Swear to God, I'm Not God?
That's that bitch.
They're like, this bitch stole a whole bottle.
That's that bitch that took all the liquor.
I did. I had a good time, though. I'm not going to lie. It was, I had a few come to Jesus moments. Oh, my God. I just smacked myself in the face with this mic. A few come to Jesus moments. I also read a great book called The Last Flight, which my boss Susan gave me. I'm sorry, I'm trying to fix my mic. Which my boss Susan gave me that I absolutely love. Cried at the end, pissed me off. So anyway, we're going to talk about Carl Panzram. So let's do this. Sip. Where's your drink?
Over here where it's safe because I'm clumsy.
Oh, okay. Facts.
Unless you want a puddle.
Nope. Mm-mm. All right. So we're going to talk about Carl. Now, when did I first hear about Carl? I heard about Carl. After I heard about Albert Fish.
My fave.
Now, y'all.
I love Albert
If you're
Fish.
listening
well,
to this,
not like literally love because that motherfucker was sick. But like in terms of a sick motherfucker, that is a sick motherfucker, okay?
He is sickety sick. And Albert Fish, you know, I don't even know if I have the emotional cash to go through Albert Fish after I did Carl Panzram.
I do.
Okay.
So,
all right. When I do Albert Fish, I'll let you know.
You know.
Albert Fish is a lot. And Carl Panzram. So, and it's weird because when I first started working at Chicago Fire in 2012, when we moved into the main production office, we used to, during Halloween, play documentaries, like horror documentaries, out loud from my computer. And one of the first documentaries we played was Albert Fish. So just imagine being in the office and hearing about like an old man who's writing letters to these like little kids' parents about how he wants to boil their ass and
having like
chicken broth and shit like that. If you don't know who Albert Fish was like old bastard who was kidnapping children and murdering them, raping them, torturing them, murdering them, and then cooking them.
And eating
them. Yeah. He was like making whole stews out of children. It's wild.
And then writing letters to their parents about it.
Yeah. And being
describing
like,
it.
Yo, by the way, Johnny's plump ass tastes good with carrots and cabbage. Like that's the type of shit he was on. Mm-hmm. He was wild. Carl, thankfully, at least not that we know of, he never engaged in cannibal behavior, but he had many other issues. He was a serial killer. He was a spree killer. He was a rapist. He was specifically a pederast, which is a man who is into male children. I didn't know until I saw the movie Seven that pederast was a thing. Kevin Spacey's in the back seat of the car with Morgan Freeman.
Morgan Freeman is driving. Brad Pitt is passenger.
Yes.
He goes, let us not forget the disease spreading whore.
Yes. That whole fucking, that whole thing. And he was like, a pederast. And I was like, what is a pederast? And then I looked it up.
So watch Seven later.
A pederast. Didn't know that was a thing.
So gonna watch
because we use pedophile. You know what I mean? Like that's what we use, but I didn't know. Anyway, so we're gonna talk about Carl. He was a burglar. He was a robber. He was a murderer. He was a rapist. He was an arsonist. But like Kirrah said, he also, the lifestyle from the very beginning was not great. So it makes sense when you really, really think about it. All right. So here we go. Now, Carl Panzram apparently said, I wish you all had one neck and I had my hands on it.
I know that's right.
What? No, it's not where I was expecting. It's not where I was expecting that to go.
Y'all get on my nerves.
He was born June 28th, 1891 on a farm in East Grand Forks, Minnesota. He was the sixth of seven children. Now, the book kind of said he was one of seven. And then in other sources, I read that he was one of six. So in multiple sources, I'm just going to assume the book is wrong. The book that I read was Kill 'Em All by Ryan Green. And his book is where he said that he had seven brothers. And I was like, he had seven brothers? Or did he have six brothers and one sister?
Maybe it was a typo. Six is really close to seven.
It is. They're close. So whatever. They're all dead. So we'll just assume he's the sixth of seven. He did have one sister, though. But he had a shit ton of brothers. He was the son of a dirt farmer East Prussian immigrants, Johann John Gottlieb Panzram and Matilda Elizabeth Lizzie Panzram. His family basically had kids so they could work the farm. Like that was, which was not totally uncommon at that time. Like most motherfuckers had kids to do work. They didn't understand like the idea of like child rearing and making sure they were like decent members of society. They were more so like, yeah, there's two of us. We got all these fucking goats and cows. We need some niggas.
Somebody to shuck
We
corn.
need somebody to clean this shit up. So they had kids. They were forced to work on the farm until truancy laws were enacted, which basically made it illegal for children not to go to school, as we know. His work in school was terrible. He didn't have a lot of friends. Duh. He developed a real bad cough. And that could be because he was bronchial. That could be because he was exposed to a lot of chemicals. Who the fuck knows? It's 1891. These motherfuckers are exposed to all types of shit. They don't even know what it is. So he ends up developing an ear infection, a terrible ear infection. His ear had gotten so bad that his father and his brothers held him down on the kitchen table and jammed a kitchen knife through his ear to cut out the infection like he was a fucking animal. That's what his father was used to doing to animals. You know, you cut out the infection. He was like, you know, fuck it. Yeah, this is my son.
I can't believe how confused people were back then.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
They didn't
it's
understand
just
shit.
because without internet,
Yeah.
books,
Sans internet.
and like deep telephone conversation.
And just really just without formal education. Like the only people that were learning about science and medicine was scientists and medical students.
And he was born in what, Minnesota?
Yeah. Midwest. Yep. East Grand Forks, Minnesota.
And where the hell is that?
East of Grand Forks.
Copy.
Yeah. So who the fuck cares? It's cold up there. That's all I got. Now, they decided to do a little self-surgery on Carl because they couldn't afford to be down one farm animal. So we got 7
so you
kids.
Just take the ear of one of your kids.
Like, I'm just like, who cares? This motherfucker here now.
We need this animal, not this child.
So, plus they couldn't afford to take him to the hospital. So Carl passed out before they reached his brain because, you know, one would hope that they would pass out before they reached the brain. And he woke up screaming when they... This isn't funny.
I'm like, how are you laughing?
Because I'm drunk.
I'm getting a headache from the very thought of it. Like, just the visual of, like, having a child's head pressed against the hard table, like, with a
I
knife
think I'm
jammed
one of those
into it.
people that laugh when I'm uncomfortable.
Oh.
I think I'm developing into one of those
We'll talk
people.
about that later.
That's a terrible thing.
We'll revisit that at a later
Yeah,
date.
I should probably talk to my therapist. So he woke up screaming when they started pouring boiling hot water into his ear.
Also effective.
To further kill the infection, because obviously boiling water kills bacteria, but you know, they didn't care. I mean, he was screaming to high hell. This, of course, didn't help, and Carl ended up in the hospital anyway, and he lost partial hearing in his ear. The fuck? Now, during this botched surgery, it's likely that he suffered damage to his frontal lobe, which is what made him mild and violent later. I said mild, wild, and violent later.
I was going to say, there is not shit mild.
Nothing mild about this
anything
motherfucker.
He's done.
The frontal lobe controls thinking, emotions, personality, judgment, self-control, muscle control, movements, memory storage, and much, much more. Eventually, the other brothers would leave home after motherfuckers grow up. And they like, we out. So they left. And Carl was left at home with his parents. The farm was failing. So Carl's father was like, all right, I'm out.
What? Imagine to be the 6th of 7 children or the 5th of 6, however fucking many. And then like to find out you had a piece of metal stuck in your head and boiling hot water glued, poured down your ear. Mm-hmm. Just to find out, not only would your siblings leave anyway, but the farm would eventually fail.
Yes.
You ended up in the hospital, you can't hear.
Yes.
And your daddy's like, actually, I'm finna go anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like Could I have potentially kept my hearing and not been a psycho? And my daddy still would have left? And then all of these goats still would have died?
You know, but there's no real... all the goats would...
Like, what is the outcome?
And there's honestly no guarantee either way, because at the end of the day, he could have easily been fucked up just because his parents were terrible parents. I think the frontal lobe thing fucked up like his sense of restraint, but I think that overall he probably would have ended up being a murdering psychopath regardless.
I can say that probably like a good 45%, like half of that is him having all of that shit poured into his ear is the reason why he's a psychopath. Because, like, I can guarantee you, if someone poured boiling water in my head, I'd be crazy for the rest of my life.
And you know, I would probably say 85% of it is the fact that they did that.
Copy.
Yeah.
So
that's pretty much, that's probably.
And then his daddy left anyway.
Yeah, and his father fucking booked, and the remaining sons refused to help. They were like, fuck all of y'all. Like,
they're like, we're not crazy. So we're actually going to go and get jobs.
I'm
like you all
blowing this popsicle stand. I'm out. You
all should have gotten jobs, okay?
So the one remaining son who would even remotely consider helping the mom died in a drowning accident. Because luck. So Carl's first arrest was for public intoxication. He was 8 years old. He made relationships with old drunks at the bar and immediately developed a pretty serious drinking problem. And that was at 8. His violence plus alcohol made him really, really dangerous. So he resented everyone and everything, and he blamed others for the abuse and how terrible his life was, which we know. White men kind of do that anyway. I mean... Just being honest. It's like, no, your life's fucked up because your mom had sex with her brother and had you.
Nothing to do with the outside party.
Yeah, it's like your mom had sex with her brother and had you, and then you're kind of off because of the incest.
You started drinking at the age of 8
and then
also.
And not to mention, your father he tried to do ear surgery and poked into your brain.
I don't think you were going to grow up to be like a member of the fucking Kendall Royal family.
No.
You know, like you weren't going to grow up to be in Succession.
No. And meanwhile, like the Royals are also products of incest.
This is true.
So, he's not. I don't know. His parents aren't, but I'm just saying, like, at that time, before people really understood what the adverse effects were of incestual, breeding. Yeah. They were kind of just doing it because they were like, fuck it, I know you. So
what in it triggers that? Like, what brings you to that point? What level of desperation, horniness, and or whiskey?
The only thing I could think of that would really bring like nowadays is rape. Like rape, like. And honestly, unless you're in a small town where everybody does it and you're like, I had a conversation about this with mom. Like this is going to sound fucked up, but I kind of understand if people accidentally sleep with their cousins.
I think only if you don't realize that's your cousin. Like if it's a long distance relative that you've never met at a Christmas dinner or something like that.
And you didn't I didn't even know that was my cousin. If y'all
get together every Halloween, Christmas, and Thanksgiving, I got questions.
Yeah.
Like clearly y'all buying Christmas.
Y'all knew. You knew you were blood related. So why would you choose to do this?
What's the reason for you picking Billy Bob?
Yeah.
Instead of like Jordan Jane.
That's facts. No, I get that too. And then too, at what point? And then at what point do you stop? Like, do you continue to fuck your cousin?
When do you say this is too much?
Then you're like, should we be doing this? But I think but I'm saying that to say that I understand cousin a little bit more than I understand, or even a distant cousin, than I understand a brother, sister, aunt, uncle.
Yeah. Sibling.
You know what I mean? Like sibling.
I will never get.
Mom, dad type shit. Like, that's fucking weird. Even though that has nothing to do with this story. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish what I was But I'm saying that at that time, people were like big into just like doing wild shit because they didn't understand the repercussions of it. And even though over time we learned that genetically there are repercussions, there was no social constructs for real that was like, yeah, you shouldn't do that. You know what I mean? Just like having like young brides, or like having sex with kids way younger than the age of consent. Like there was no concept of some of that shit.
But it should just be common knowledge that could potentially be wrong.
You would think so.
But I say that as a person that lives in the year 2023.
Yeah.
If I lived in the 1800s, besides being a slave, I would not have this knowledge.
No.
So, I mean,
you have to look at it from a lens of like that time. That time was like everybody was just like trying to survive. You know what I mean? You got a new country. Y'all, this country is like 100 years old at this point. Like this fucking country is young as shit. Everybody's dirty. There isn't even really like real water and shit.
There were so many
rats and disease and like all types of fucked
the Black
up shit.
Plague.
So I will say Carl Panzram kind of like is the epitome of the id, which the id is like a psychosexual level. It's Freudian, where it's like that animalistic part of everybody that does not have any social rules. I do what I want. I fuck who I want. I eat what I want. I do everything that I want. It's the animal part of it. It's just my nature.
Sounds like a Libra man.
Okay.
Libra men, are y'all related to Carl Panzram in any way? Don't all answer at once.
She said it. I don't have no beef with Libra man.
Never tell the truth. But carry on.
But it's kind of like the distinction, like, okay, here's a great example. So he had 3 psychosexual stages. I hope I'm remembering this correctly because it's been years since I learned them. But it was the id, the ego, the superego. So like there's this part of us that's like animalistic, that's carnivorous in a way, because we're animals. And then there's that part of us that society molds into a certain thing to say, okay, you can exercise this carnal behavior, but you must do it within the social contract of everyday life. So like, hey, doctor, surgeon, you have it inherently in you where you feel like you can cut up a human body. But to murder someone and cut them up is against the social contract. So you should become a surgeon instead. You see what I'm saying?
Valid.
It's like either you're that guy who's just at home with this like feeling of, I want to cut a bitch up, but you just don't. Or you're that guy who say, ooh, I want to cut a bitch up, and you become a surgeon. Or an autopsy technician.
Forever and ever and
yeah, it's like when you ask yourself like, so now every time I look at certain professions, like you look at a police officer or a detective who can like walk into a crime scene, he has access to a certain extent to that animal carnal part of himself. He understands that part of himself. Yeah. Dominatrices, they understand that sexual part of themselves that makes them want to, you know what I mean, do certain things, and they do it in a safe environment where no one gets hurt for real and nobody goes to jail.
Or even people that work in funeral homes.
Yeah.
Because if you sit around working in funeral homes, I don't know.
You're a different breed.
I don't know how.
And that's to me what nowadays what we mean when we say a motherfucker's a different breed. I think of the psychosexual levels from Sigmund Freud, and it makes me think they tap into their id. Mm-hmm. You tapped into that animal part of yourself that was like, I want to do this, but I'm a good person. I can't do this criminally. The difference between Carl Panzram is because he, his frontal lobe was fucked up. He was going to tap into that animal part. Like he was an animal. If you at the age of 8 are already drunk all the time and hanging around with old drunks in bars, and then you're already showing signs of being violent, like you resent everybody, you blame everybody. Like there was no aspect of like understanding with Carl Panzram.
Yeah.
All he could really understand was, why the fuck is my life this fucked up?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, no one was there to explain it.
No. And he started robbing people because he couldn't understand why they had and he didn't. Why do they have what I don't have? Why am I abused and they're not? Now, originally, he just wanted to be a cowboy, which every kid at that time wanted to be a cowboy. But he soon just turned into a drunk criminal. He attended the Minnesota State Reform School, which was Catholic and basically a child prison where children would be punished by flagellation. Do you know what flagellation is?
No.
I didn't know what flagellation was because we didn't grow up religious, and I didn't know until I watched Da Vinci Code. The flagellation is when people get like those like whipping rods and they whip their own back.
Yeah.
They do that to mimic the wounds of Christ. Mm. And that's supposed to kind of be like them sacrificing their bodies for the, for the religion. I'm feeling the pain of Christ type thing. Mm-hmm. So because he went to a Catholic school, they punished them by whipping them, which, that's no shock. We learned that in Albert Fish. Albert Fish was also somebody that was heavily into flagellating himself.
Yeah.
So by age 11, Carl was being questioned by school officials about his sexuality and had his genitals thoroughly examined to see if he was telling the truth about whether or not he was being gay.
I don't know if that really helps. Like, as just a human being, I don't think having your genitals examined really shows any sort of like homosexuality, especially at the age of 11.
Yeah. Partially because most children, and I'm just saying that because I was not, other than movies, like I don't feel like we were that exposed to like sex at that age.
No.
So to kind of just, you're kind of already showing the corruption in this facility by even conditioning this boy. You're grooming him at that point to understand a concept that he would not have understood had you not mentioned it to him right now.
But what's the connection between the two even? You're a raging alcoholic at the age of 11. Are you gay?
Well, I think what these reform schools were doing, and the same thing that we learn about like the Catholic Church now, is where you got like all of these people who have like their own closeted emotional issues that they use, specifically children that are easier to groom, as a way to demonstrate those deviant behaviors, because then they know because manipulators and people who are abusers completely and totally understand how to indoctrinate a person and to get them to do and bend at their will. And that at that age, 11, you can get this kid to do whatever the fuck you want him to do. And so the warden would continue to demonstrate what happened in situations if he was gay. Yeah.
Sure.
There was this wooden warehouse called the painting room. The painting room is where boys would be whipped and tortured until they were painted black and blue. Wow. That was the point. The painting room's sole purpose was to beat boys into submission. So they would be stripped, tied to a bench. A wet, salted towel was placed on their bodies. And the belt that he used was designed with these holes in it. So every time it hit, it created a blister, like a welt. And when you repeatedly hit that blister, it would eventually rupture. And then the salt from the towel would burn the wound.
What?
Yes.
Why? What does that teach? Like, what is the lesson besides a little bit of anatomy?
I think, more importantly, I just think it's just torture.
It's literally just torture.
It's literally just torture. It's not, and of course you got the sick depravity of the people that are administering the torture. The warden is eating this the fuck up. Carl eventually realized that the best thing to do was to stop screaming.
Oh, so he couldn't show that he was in pain. Because
yes.
Clearly they get off on pain.
Even when they hit him harder. Can I just say, Carl was a motherfucking gangster.
I don't understand.
Mind you, I'm talking about kid Carl, because man Carl gets fucked up. But kid Carl was a motherfucking gangster because he learned he may have been a little retarded, but I tell you what, motherfucker.
Oh God.
Motherfucker catch on real quick. He was like, oh, bet. You all like when I feel like this? Cool. I'm gonna stop screaming. So he stopped screaming. As retaliation, he would pee in all liquids and ejaculated in all the food.
I know that's right.
All of the officers' food. His wounds would never really close as a result of the beatings. What the officers soon realized was that Carl was not easily broken. They would beat Carl so much that the officers would get tired. Beating Carl was exhausting. They would start using a paddling machine instead to get the officers a break because the officers was fucking tired, which meant that the sessions would last longer. So he was getting beaten for a longer period of time. They then started to add sexual humiliation to the beatings because now they're like, okay, regular old whoopings ain't working. How can we humiliate him?
So basically, this has nothing to do with teaching a lesson.
No, this is at this point, this is just them, flexing their creepy, perverted muscle. Mm-hmm. Now, they didn't know how else to torture him. So Carl was more powerful. They realized very quickly that Carl was more powerful than them. Over time, Carl built up so much resentment, he started bullying the other boys and even started trying to poison the warden. He was like, this motherfucker got to go. This was the first attempt that Carl had. His name is also Charles. So if I say that, that's why. This was the first attempt at killing someone. That was at 11. Carl was reported and he was removed from dinner duty. They were like, this motherfucker keep nutting in the pasta.
They're like, we did not ask for creamy pasta today. We asked for tomato based.
We got this creamy.
I don't know where this creamy concoction
creamy
is coming from.
fettuccine.
We don't even got no milk in the kitchen. It's so gross. Yet understandable.
I get it. So this was okay. So they put him on the evening cleaning detail instead.
So y'all thought this nigga was gonna clean?
Wait a minute, but you gave him chemicals? The fuck?
Thought he was gonna
he's
clean?
nutting and pissing in your food and drink. You thought he was gonna clean?
Maybe they thought he would just like bleach himself to death.
Okay, maybe, but he ain't suicidal. And so they put him on cleaning detail. But with the life Carl had at home, they were like, motherfucker, you ain't saying nothing but a word. He was up only 2 hours. He would never sleep. And I think that's another reason why he was so sick in the head. Because, they say when you don't sleep, you fucking go crazy.
You screw yourself over.
This whole time, this period, this dinner detail turned into Carl's playtime. I mean, he would gain access to all sorts of cleaning products. And one day he just decided to set the painting room on fire. Now, originally, we already tipsy, so I'm not going to do it. But originally, I was going to incorporate a drinking game where we take not a shot, but just a sip of pure white every time Carl set something on fire.
It's only so funny because I know how sick he was.
Because
he woke up and set shit on fire.
And I'm going to tell you.
Like some people go to Trader Joe's, he set shit on fire.
He set shit on fire. And there's no fucking way we could get through this podcast I got like 9 more pages left with how drunk we'll be. With how many fires he sets. He was a serial arsonist.
I was going to say, wasn't he just considered an arsonist?
Like, he was an arsonist. So he was like, you know what? I'm going to set the painting room on fire because fuck this. So Carl got hip to the fact that his rebellion wasn't going to help him get out. He started pretending like he was better. He was like, I'm a good kid. He was actually giving the officers the false comfort of reform. They were like, oh, okay, the beatings are working. And so he would even try to excel in his classes and began to join in on conversations. And in 1 month, the warden signed his parole papers.
I would be terrified in his class.
I wouldn't say
oh
shit.
God, he knows the answers. We need to run.
Mm-hmm. He learned very quickly that lying is the best way to get what you want, and the strong will always prey on the weak.
Smart kid.
That's what he learned at 11. After getting out, his mom was praying that her sons would help with the farm. They were like,
she's still struggling on this farm.
They were like, yo.
Girl, leave.
Sons were like, does hell go with no?
She's like, so are you going to help now? And they're like, fuck no, I'm a banker.
Yeah, he's like, no, I'm good.
No thanks.
She could no longer handle the farm on her own. And Carl was ecstatic ecstatic. He hated all of this shit. He would deliberately start to destroy the farm. He killed animals. He destroyed what few crops were left.
Why would they think he'd want to contribute? What? Didn't they think about where he's been the past couple of years?
This motherfucker been in reform school.
Like, why didn't they think? She was desperate.
He's literally a child prisoner.
Anyone to pick up these fucking eggs.
Exactly. They're like, would somebody just come and tend to this farm?
Would someone please rake the fucking hay?
But he started robbing his mother.
It's not funny.
For the drinking money. He needed booze.
He's like, bitch.
And he like, bitch, I'm too young to be out here working.
I'm too young to be working. I'd have been beaten. I'd have been nutting in soup. I need a drink.
So he started robbing his mother. Now, he would eventually develop a partnership randomly with this Native American.
Hennessy?
No, with this Native American kid. And they both would start like robbing and sexually humiliating people.
Confusing.
Yeah. You can't make sense out of it. It's fine.
It's very king of the hill for me.
So, is it? The fuck? I don't remember that being on Nickelodeon. So his mother knew that he was up to something. Even Carl would he would attempt to act normal. And he once told her that he wanted to be a priest. And she was like, oh, what? You want to be a priest? So she writes.
People are so stupid.
She gullible as fuck. So she writes a letter to a seminary. And not only was he accepted, they gave him a scholarship.
I can't even get faster. We're trying to go to school forever. And they tell me no. I ain't set shit on fire. I ain't nutted nobody's soup. I haven't killed a single animal. I have 2 cats. Okay? And they both have insurance. And I still can't get a scholarship. That's crazy. I hate it here.
They were like, bet. How much
you need?
We'll take them.
What do you mean?
So, of course, his mom, okay, so wait, let me make sure I'm where I'm supposed to be because I don't want to move too fast. Okay, here we are. All right, so she gets the scholarship. One of his tutors knew that he was faking it. She was like, this is not a good kid. And so he tried to denounce him, and Carl shifted into his old self very quickly.
His eyebrows went down.
He was like, bitch,
whoa. Who do you think I am? So I'm pussy? Okay, bet. We'll see.
So what you saying
I'm
is
gonna knock all this shit off.
You want to fuck around and find out. That's what she's saying. But this was fucked up because instead they just start beating him. Exactly. The beating started again. The beating started again, and they started beating him daily, even when he pretended to do things right. So the goal again was to break him. He wanted to see how serious Carl was. And during one beating, Carl's pistol fell out of his pocket. Carl
kept that thing on me.
Carl was strapped.
It's like he put in the Grand Theft Auto cheat code.
It was like up, down, left, right, left, right, left.
I thought you were supposed to be a priest.
Triangle X. R1, R2, L1, R2, left, down, right, up, left, down, right, up.
Or left, down, left.
Which one was that? The bazooka?
I think so.
Okay. R1, R2, L1, R2, left, down, right, left, down,
no,
right,
left, down, right, up, left,
down, right, up, left, down, right, up. Yep. Okay. Anyway, that was our GTA.
I have OCD.
If you still have your PS2, like I have my PS2. So anyway, so the pistol fell out of Carl's pocket. Carl pointed directly between the superintendent's eyes and pulled the fucking trigger.
Period.
But because the gun was not properly maintained, it didn't fire.
Goddamn, Carl.
Now, they took his pistol away.
Naturally. They said, you can't have this.
They're like, you should not be. Why do you have a gun? This is now the second time Carl has tried to kill somebody. The first time he tried to poison the warden at the reform school. Now he's at the Catholic school and he's just tried to kill the superintendent. So needless to say, he stopped attending. His mom told him, she was like, yo, if you gonna stay here, which I'm like, damn, he younger than 14. She like, if you gonna stay here, like, you gotta work on the farm. So instead,
she let this farm go.
That's all
not working.
That's all she got. He had to work on the farm. So instead he packed up and he hit the motherfucking road. He was like, I'm out. So by 14, he has turned into a complete deviant. One time he ran into a middle-aged homeless man. This is while he was train hopping. They drank. Things got weird. The man raped Carl. This is at 14.
That escalated quickly.
Yeah. He tried to fight, but he didn't win. He was raped all night, and he was tossed off the train. Next morning, he woke up in the field in excruciating pain, covered in blood and semen. Ugh. He realized there was more than, like, there was more to sex. Like, it wasn't about anything else other than power. That's what he started to associate sex with. This was about domination. He would never, ever allow himself to be fooled by kindness again. Because originally the homeless man was like, they have those homeless encampments and they were talking to him and they were drinking to him and he drinking with him and he thought shit was sweet. And then homie raped him. And that's when he was like, fuck all of y'all. His whole idea was you have to turn on them before they turn on you. So Carl is just now a hobo bouncing around from tent city to tent city. Tent cities were more like these like mini hubs where like transient people can kind of get together and like look at the fucking crime message board. Just looking, who can we rob today? And one day he was in a tent city and a conversation about sodomy came up, which is normal, I suppose. Like, oh yeah, fucking somebody in the ass. That comes up at the meetings. No, it doesn't.
I'm looking around like,
what meeting?
It does.
Carl was asked about his experience with it. Originally, they agreed to take turns with Carl. Did they talk to him first? Well, apparently they did because he was drunk at this point and he was like, I'm gonna keep drinking because they're gonna rape me anyway. So he drank to the point where he passed out because he knew what was gonna be next. Terribly sad.
It's kind of sad.
He felt like sodomizing boys must be one of life's greatest pleasure if so many men want to do it. Because every man he encountered seemed to want to rape him. So Carl became reluctant about traveling with hobos after that. So he had to rely on, he was like,
I don't know about y'all. It was cool at first, but I don't know. Things are getting weird.
You motherfuckers.
Like, how about you're a 14-year-old drunk that keeps trying to
kill people? And you're a fucking wild bunch. If all y'all do is get in these like circle orgies. The fuck?
Homeless circle orgies.
Yeah, dirty dick everywhere.
Oh my God. I just got so nauseous.
This is also about child rape. So it's not funny.
It's not funny.
It's not funny.
It's not
it's
funny.
Just that
it's just everyone's way of thinking back then.
Yes, that's it's so funny. Ridiculous where you're like...
The math does not math.
But I'm going to be honest, there's no guarantee that doesn't happen right now to transient youth that end up in like these homeless tent encampments.
Oh, of course
you know what I mean? Where with mentally ill people who are just like either drug abusers or alcoholics that see something that they can have control over and they take advantage of it.
And it's fucking sick then too.
Yeah, it's sick as fuck. So once he so he started getting weapons because he was like robbing people all the time. Like he started stealing to like feed himself and to afford his drinking habit. So he started getting guns too in some of these robberies. And so he robbed someone at gunpoint, but to add a little glitz and glamour to it, he would start raping them at gunpoint himself. Gracious. He was caught by a railroad worker one time raping another man. And then he proceeded to force the railway worker to rape the man that he was raping before he raped both of them.
What? At the age of 14, you're convincing grown-ass men to rape other grown-ass men.
He was doing it at gunpoint.
At gunpoint.
He had a gun at this point. So, yeah. And he finally got picked up on a larceny charge and was sent to Red Wing Reform School. And he worked again at a school farm. Again, he would get beaten, but it didn't really matter. Carl was a predator. He started stealing and raping the other students. Everyone knew who he was, and they were terrified of him. And while at the reform school, Carl developed a relationship with this kid named Jimmy. He thought Jimmy was attracted to him. But for him, sex was more about power, not about romance and connection.
Right. I'm like, so is he officially a homosexual?
Well, that's the thing too, is like Carl never fully admitted to being gay for real. But there was an aspect, like, because there is and I'll get to it too, where he rapes a woman.
I was going to say, I don't hear any interactions with a woman outside of his mother and his sister.
Yeah.
Like everyone else seems to have been a man.
Yeah. And everybody that has abused him has been a man too, for the most part. So, but because he associates sex with power and punishment, that's how he punishes, is by raping. So, him and Jimmy once attempted to escape the reform school and would rob the churches before setting them on fire. They thought they were caught. But they had raised a lot of money. They did that little hustle for 4 months before Jimmy was arrested on a larceny charge. By 15, Carl was in Kansas and running out of money because he had all the money that he stole from the churches. So killing became his next trick to learn, which is like, where else would you learn that without going to jail other than the army? So he decided.
Oh,
yeah.
So embarrassing.
I know. He decided that he was going to join the army. And of course, he lied about his age. He was entirely too young. He was 15. But while in the army, because he did get in, he couldn't take an order because he has a huge fucking problem with authority. I don't know if you noticed. He does not like being told what to do. He couldn't rape these men easily either. So to satisfy himself, he would sneak off base with stolen uniforms to sell for booze. He then ended up developing a beef with the William Taft, who was one of our presidents at some point. At the time, William Taft was a Secretary of War, and Panzram was used as an example because he was, stealing all this shit and going in other towns and raping people and drinking and acting crazy. He was dishonorably discharged. So ever since then, and then he was sent to Leavenworth. This was at like 15, but by the time Carl was 16, he was ready for fucking revenge. He was like, I'm coming back for this motherfucker. So he was not for William Taft. Now, Carl was a fucking menace. He had this very kill or be killed attitude. He was an animal. He would be raped and beaten almost everywhere he went. And he was still a menace. They were trying to beat him into submission, but every time he would get upset, it would just make him stronger. So the men would get pissed at him because every time he got in trouble, the entire company got in trouble. They would make them do all those like fucked up drills. But there was even a fucked up punishment that they did where they would tie them in a straitjacket and squeeze them to death until they passed out.
What? How does this help? I don't see how that helps anything.
I'm laughing because of the creativity.
Like what?
Like who comes up with this shit?
How did we even get to that point?
How we get there? So that's the type of shit that they would do. They would put even the ball and chain on them, but Carl was fucking superhuman. Torture didn't make him tired. Torture made him more brutal. So he exacted revenge on the men that had tried to rape him previously while he was in the army. After his stint in Leavenworth, Carl was back to raping hobos. I mean, he made it all the way to Denver, which is actually where he claimed he raped a woman and afterward his penis was leaking pus and blood because he had gonorrhea. I don't really believe it. I think that was an excuse. You telling me you've been in all that hobo ass and that's the first time you got gonorrhea?
I was going to say, so wait, he's saying that the woman he raped gave him gonorrhea?
Yes.
Not the several homeless men he raped along the way?
All the dookie shoots. That you've been gallivanting in.
Not gallivanting. I just
like how you be in whole sex rings.
He's like, this woman gave me gonorrhea.
This bitch gave me gonorrhea.
She gave me the G.
And after they gave
only her.
Exactly, just her. She's the only one that did it. And they gave him like roots and all that shit. So after his infection cleared up, he was like, never again. I ain't fucking with no bitches. A hobo ass over a vagina? Are you kidding? The fuck are we talking?
What? When the universe makes these kind of people,
yep.
Where do we go from
I don't
here?
know.
Like, what is supposed to come of them? What are we supposed to do with them?
This is random, but I'm gonna say I wrote something about that.
What? I wrote a song about it, like the here it go.
So I was fucking stoned out of my mind the other day, and like I was thinking about God and like randomness and like the universe.
And Carl Panzram.
And what? And one of the things that I thought, I said, God is just the universe moving with intention. Does that make sense? Because I'm high now.
You see me looking around, I'm like,
God is just the universe moving with the intention, right? Because the universe is usually random.
yeah.
And when you said what you said, it made me think about that. Like, how does people like Carl Panzram ultimately exist? And that's because the universe is random. But then it's not until you like actually start existing that your existence comes with a certain level of intention. That's where God comes in. The universe is what created you. God is what gave you intention.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, what's
right. So I put, and this was all when I was high, and I haven't read it since. But if the universe performs at random, then there can't be God. If God created free will, then God doesn't exist at all. Free will implies that we can do whatever we want all the time at random, but God can't be random. Random isn't created, it just exists. God created the randomness of the universe, or did the universe create God? And if there is a God, he created the idea of existence with free will. Isn't that what random is? So God did create randomness.
You wrote all that? I thought it was like I didn't know it was a fucking limerick. I thought it was just a couple lines.
Oh, that was it. That was it.
A fucking paragraph. She's like written by Maya Angelou. What?
I can't even explain it, but whatever. So anyway, all right. So, but because you said how does the universe make things like that? Make people like him, make situations like that. That's what made me think about that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to listen to it tomorrow and see if it makes sense because I'm too high to kind of piece it together right now. So we're going to move on. Now, by age 19, Carl was 6 feet tall, 199 pounds of pure muscle.
Ooh, red bone.
Fine.
A zaddy.
Zaddy. It's a zaddy. So he served his next prison term for stealing a bike, which I think is way harsh, Ty.
That is harsh, but considering the things that he did before that.
Yeah, but they didn't know about that. They know about stealing the bike.
I'm like, that. They were just like, look.
They were like, this nigga need to be in jail.
You need to be put away. You sick.
But I'm going to tell you, remember when I did H.H. Holmes? Like, that's all that motherfucker did was steal bikes. And I was kind of like, I guess y'all ain't really, really have cars like that. So people were just like,
but could
bicycling.
you imagine a motherfucker on a bike in a top hat?
Or one of those bikes with the big front wheel and the two small back ones.
You'll never catch me alive, Papa.
Fucking James. Could you imagine James Cagney on a fucking bike? No, sirree, Bob.
Oh shit, that would be hilarious.
That'd be
but it is
foolishness.
humiliating, which is how you get here and you become a serial.
But he was
rapist
also
of
19, so stealing a bike. He was still young. If he was 40 stealing a bike, I'd be like, this nigga's a loser.
But also he didn't have much room to like mature either.
Yeah.
You know, like he was beaten into submission.
Yeah.
By the age of 8, he was drinking alcohol and being brutally raped by 11.
All the time.
You know, and he had nobody to tell him right from wrong.
Yeah.
People were just beating him and going, we'll see how you act after that.
Yeah. Yeah. For
so
sure.
there is no maturity there.
For sure. Yeah.
He's
that's
an
real.
8-year-old stuck in a 19-year-old's body.
For sure. And let's not forget the actual physiological damage that was done to his brain.
Yeah.
Now you got somebody who's possibly just trapped in their childhood state. That happened to him when he was like 8, 9, 10 years old. That's really fucking young.
Which I think somebody needs to talk to his parents and be like, I don't know.
We would have to pull out a Ouija board.
Somebody. Someone needs to go back to the late 1800s.
Yeah.
And ask his parents what the hell they could have been thinking.
Facts.
And why that made sense.
They weren't. They
They
thinking.
created literally a murderer.
They literally did. Now, okay, so he would cozy up to his bunk maker, Jesus Christ.
Butt maker?
Bunk mate.
Butt maker.
Who actually, no pun intended. His bunk mate who actually taught him safe cracking. Carl would be released before his lessons were complete. And so he broke back into the prison to break out the person that was teaching him how to crack safes. But instead, he got arrested and he did one more month and he was able to complete his lessons.
It's like the Matrix in the 1800s.
Like, I don't know if that's brilliant or dumb. It was like, he had it where it worked either way. It was like, yo, either I do an extra month in prison and get my lessons, or I break out the person that's teaching me lessons.
But I think part of him liked prison.
I think there's a part of him that because I feel like as human beings, we need structure.
Yeah.
And I think with people who are institutionalized, because he was institutionalized at a very young age, that level of structure just becomes a part of your reality and you don't understand anything different.
I mean, it's pretty straightforward.
It ends up being your home.
It's not anything overly complicated. There's no real jobs. Yeah. There. Like you get up, you eat breakfast, you read, go play basketball.
Right. You get your activity. If you do something wrong, this is what happens. If you do that, then this is what happens.
Not to mention, in jail, in prison, he's surrounded by men, which is all he knows in the first place.
And all he wants to fuck, so he's living the life around.
Hey, man, it's a resort for him.
Yeah. And not to mention the fact, too, that, just like with prison, I mean, obviously, he has basically been in prison. You have these and I hate this prison culture level like of indoctrination where it's like people don't even know how to wake up without the institution telling them to wake up. You know what I mean?
That's how people end up going back in.
Yeah, because that's where they feel at home.
Yeah.
It's like that's where everything is kind of in its box. That's where I have control. I hate to make this comparison, but that's the difference between an animal in the wild and an animal at a zoo. Mm-hmm. A zoo is going to be on a schedule. Yeah. A zoo is going to have structure, bounds, walls, things like that. Wild is like, you out there, good luck, survival of the fittest.
Yeah, and then as a human, if you haven't been taught that because your parents are too busy trying to run a fucking farm that doesn't exist.
A dirt farm, which I didn't even look that up.
Who farms dirt?
Yeah, I don't
what
get
does
that.
Even mean?
But
it's like he didn't know anything different.
No, he didn't. So he was. Sad story. It is a sad story because you're talking about somebody who was built to be a monster.
And this is literally by the age of 19.
Yeah.
Like this, we started at 8 and we are now at 19.
Yeah.
So his life has been fucked since the age of 8.
11 years of fuckery.
And probably before 8. Mm-hmm. That's just all we know about. Ain't no telling what the fuck his parents did to him as a toddler.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So here Carl is, he's, got this safe cracker. He wants to break him out. He ends up doing an extra month and he's like, fuck it, I'll just learn from him. But then Carl got the wrong impression, thought the safe cracker wanted to fuck him. And Carl raped him.
What? Okay.
Violently.
See, I was on his side.
And needless to say, Carl did not get the rest of his lessons. So after getting out, he returned to stealing and burning down churches. Another fire.
He's like, fuck it, I'll go back to what
Set it on fire. Now, he would steal bikes because that's how he was able to keep, moving around. He would stop off and get a job at a fair. He was kind of like a security guy / like animal wrangler, but he was too good at the job and would fight people, just fuck people up all the time. So one time, this motherfucker punched a horse because the horse kind of nudged him and he socked it. And so that moment was the moment when Carl got fired. They're like, motherfucker, this is our bread and butter. We need these animals.
They're like, you punching horses?
So he got fired. He hopped the train to go to the circus encampment and rob them and set the entire camp on fire.
How does he keep getting jobs?
Yeah, exactly. So he made...
What happened to resume?
He made his way all the way to St. Louis and was offered a job as a strikebreaker, which, we probably need this now. A strikebreaker is a scab, and a scab, they were hired by the unions to break up the strikes. what they would do is they had different factions. And
they go down there dressed up as the big rat.
No. This is way more violent than that. They had a gang. They had these like mini factions, and one faction was called the Black Legs, where they were supposed to charge the picket line and beat up the picketers. That was literally their jobs. Now, he knew at this point that he was a powerful man, and he scared the fucking shit out of him. Every time I read this part in this book, it kind of, and I'll link the book. I didn't mention what I read. I did. Kill 'Em All. That's what I read. I'm high and I'm drunk. Shut the fuck up. So he scared the shit out of them too, because every time I read this part in the book, it kind of reminded me of that game Rampage. Because how they
get T-Rex.
No, it's
gorilla?
like it's a gorilla. Yeah, it's like King Kong on heroin. On crack. Not even heroin, because heroin makes you sleepy. Not because I've done heroin, but because it's dope.
Okay, we not beating
whatever.
Allegations.
And so, but he scared the shit out of them because he was just going through. He didn't give a fuck who he beat up so bad that he damn near killed. He just never gave a fuck.
It's like a unionized fight club,
basically, except it's one-sided. Because there's one side that's just standing there in submission, and the other side is beating everybody.
6'5" and 199 pounds.
So
and
Carl,
a serial rapist.
But the strike ended.
So it's effective.
Yeah, and he was so unpopular though in town, because this was a union town, that he would get attacked at bars. Like, he was like, "I'm sick of this. Like, I go to bars to rest. I don't go to bars to fight." But Carl would eventually become a yeg. And a yeg is an older man criminal who basically gets a teenage boy to have as his like tool and sex slave. And they called them Angelinas, like Jolie.
That's not where I was going with that, but thank you for clearing that up.
He got himself an Angelina and 2 pistols, and he didn't know how to act. He didn't know he didn't know the Angelina's name and didn't give a fuck. They made a ton of money together, robbing and disguising themselves as like hobos. Because at this point, he's making a decent living.
Him and the homeless? What's with him and homeless?
Because I feel like the randomness of their lifestyle, he felt a certain level of comfort with, because they lived in a world with no rules.
Yeah.
So he started moving around in transient circles. They made it all the way to Texas, and they were finally caught. They were sent out to work on a road crew, and his Angelina was stolen from him and raped by the prison employees.
Why can't we talk about that?
I know. Carl did 40 days on this work farm, and he was planning to be released, but they didn't release him. So instead, he tried escaping again. That's his whole story. He getting in shit. He always escaping.
What age was this now? 20 at least?
Yeah, because this is after the age of 19. So yeah, like 19, 20, 21 maybe. When he was caught, he was whipped for an hour, and he didn't scream. So they let him go, and he set his sights on robbing chicken coops and burning down farms.
Goals?
Yeah. He was just all about the destruction of humanity. So he makes it all the way to Oregon. He got a job again, briefly, but he started robbing people again. He makes it all the way to San Francisco to sell his goods that he's stealing. But then he was arrested again. He pled guilty and was sent to Oregon under the assumption that he was going to be given a lenient sentence. But when he arrived in Oregon, he was given the full sentence of 7 years. Yeah. He was so pissed that he pulled the bars apart and went on a rampage.
What? The bars of what? The jail?
The jail.
Oh.
He attacked everybody and set the prison on fire.
I can only blame the jail.
Thank you. They broke his ankles with hammers, very misery, and to get him under control. And while he was in recovery, he was transferred to Salem, Oregon, which was another prison. They were like, he a lot. He was beaten there. He was chained the entire time his ankles were healing. I know.
Even the beating is getting exhausting for me.
Look.
It's not effective.
No.
He doesn't care. He doesn't scream.
No.
It's making him crazier.
Right.
Let's just not do it.
Like, why are we doing so much
Just kill
beating?
the mother fucker.
You better off just shooting
kill him.
So a guard named Vinegar, which you already know this is about to be a problem,
God, it's giving Pulp Fiction,
was in charge of breaking certain prisoners, but Carl would never submit. So they were determined to keep Carl in prison. He was stripped, hosed, and then it escalated. One day he was chained in an ice bath. A wire was put in the bath and a battery was attached to the wire. And basically he was electrocuted. This torture device was called the hummingbird. He chased the guards with an axe and then set the place on fire.
So he continued on to do whatever it was that he was doing pre-ice bath and electrocution.
Because the shit only makes him stronger, but they don't know that.
He's fucking Wolverine, guys.
Basically.
Like, let's let it go.
So the warden didn't know what to do, so he sent Carl to the dungeon for 61 days. It was dark.
His kink.
Yeah, exactly. It was dark. That's like brunch to Carl.
He's like, ooh, the dungeon?
He's like, I could read a book. It was dark. He received no meals. He was forced to eat cockroaches.
Sounds like an appetizer.
Exactly. None of that worked. So he attempted to escape again. He started teaching the inmates also how to escape. He basically turned the entire prison into an escape room. He was like, y'all want to know how I want to get out? You want to know how you want to get out? So
I done been here several times before.
It's exhausting. One escapee that Carl actually liked was Otto Hooker, but then Hooker he shot the warden and he killed him with a stolen gun. But they added 7 years to Carl's sentence because they assumed that Carl influenced him, which was probably the case.
Carl influenced who?
Otto Hooker, which was another escapee. By 1917, Carl escaped using a hacksaw blade to cut the bars in his cell.
I love how they keep extending it, and he's like, yeah, okay.
Bet.
We'll see.
Good luck, dummy. One of the local townspeople tried to catch him and ended up in a showdown. And he ended up in a showdown with the sheriff's department, and he was taken back to Salem. Now, the warden's brother was the one that replaced the warden, the one that was killed. And during that time, they created the bullpen, which was basically like a chalk outline in the middle of a room where if the prisoners left that chalk outline, they would be shot. Kind of like, in the movie Life. Remember?
Yeah.
Okay. It's the gun line. So Superintendent Murphy came in after the second ward, the brother, and was then put in place to monitor the prison. Murphy was more progressive and he granted men privileges, including Carl. He realized that the whole beating shit wasn't working for Carl.
He realized it.
Yeah. That
it took this long.
This long. They realized, he was like, yo, this really ain't working. So he started allowing Carl to go on walks.
He's like, maybe he just needs
to walk. He needs to decompress. And Carl was so confused by being treated this decent. One of the times during the walk, Carl just came back to the prison because he thought it was a trick. He was like, I could escape. This is too easy.
I could leave.
He was granted meals and magazines. Literally. The guy was like, we need to figure out a better way. But then Carl still rebelled. But that's because he's mentally ill. And one day he just walked out of the prison, scaled the wall with a grappling hook like motherfucking Batman, and booked.
Scaled the wall with a grappling hook. You had me up until that point. You had me until you didn't. And now I'm confused.
Now,
is it maybe?
He had a grappling hook.
Where did he get it
This
from?
nigga be stealing shit. I don't know.
He was in jail. Maybe he went to Costco during his walk.
I would also like to add that most of this shit is from Carl Panzram himself. So do not be surprised if this turned out to be like Inception. Is it reality or was this just
None of it's real. He actually worked in a general store
he
for most of his life.
All of this. Now, okay, so he changed his name and his appearance every time he escaped. So, but then every time he was escaped, he was arrested. At 20, now we've made it. Oh my God, my mic fell on my chest. Now at 8, now he's 28 now.
Damn.
So
what happened?
Yeah.
For
this whole
8
period,
years.
this motherfucker has been in jail, raping people, doing all types of wild
He's
shit.
been living life crazy.
He's been living life. Oh, he future. So
it's out of control.
But Carl needed money, so he followed this like well-to-do oil man, and he beat him up and he raped him. Okay. He didn't realize until after it was over that he killed him.
He does realize that in order to get things from people, you do not have to rape and kill them.
You don't gotta do none of that.
You don't really.
I mean, the way
have
they
to beat them,
but the way, because the way they described Carl, like he was menacing as fuck. Like all you needed to do was look at you.
The motherfucker was just getting jobs left and right. So I think he could have just went up and handed him his resume and been like, "Are you hiring?" And dude would have been like, "Yeah, sure.
Bet.
I'm an oil tycoon. What you need? You need a gig? All right, I can give you a reference.
No.
You got any references? All right, I'll be one."
But he didn't want to. He didn't follow the oil man to get a job. He followed him because he was attracted to him. And I
too like to kill.
And also he figured that he was well to do. He was like, "Yo, I'm gonna rob the shit out of him." So it was more about that. But he didn't realize until after that he killed him. And Carl was in love with that power. That was the first time he realized that killing someone made him a little high. So this was technically his first murder because he strangled this dude and he got a crazy rush. Motherfuckers that's willing to kill somebody with their hands are just like a different breed. He was
200 pounds in 1917?
Yeah, 200
like
pounds.
Fucking Dan Connor.
But 200 pounds of like fury, though.
Yeah, that's
muscular
what I'm saying. He's
fury.
Big.
Yeah. So he headed over to New York. And he had a conversation with some sanitation workers in a bar one day. And he was like, I should just poison the water supply. They're like, yeah, Penguin, we don't think you should do that. But more importantly,
taking over Gotham
his biggest issue is he always goes to devastation first. And I think that has that frontal lobe damage. And I think the revenge, resentment, bitterness component mixed with frontal lobe damage made him this destructive. Because for him, all of you motherfuckers could die.
Yeah.
I've had the experiences that I've experienced. Fuck all of you. That's why I love the fact that the book is called Kill 'Em All. Because that was kind of his attitude. His attitude was like, none of us deserve to be here.
Yeah.
And even you motherfuckers that are faking it, you bitches are faking it. You're nasty just like I'm nasty. The only difference is that I walk around in my nastiness. You don't.
And you have jobs.
You're walking around acting like a fucking priest when you're actually a pervert.
Yeah. You rape children.
And even, I'm going to say this too, even the author said at the end of the book, he was like, if there's anything you can give him, he walked in his truth.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, that motherfucker, every feeling that he ever had, he exercised.
Yeah, he stood on it.
Yeah.
For 29 years as of right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
At least he's consistent.
He is. He can be trusted, actually. He can be trusted because his behavior is the way it is, but you know his behavior.
Yeah. He's never done anything outside of his usual.
Exactly.
It's like, oh, you're going to beat me? Okay, I'm going to set this house on fire.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, you're going to try to beat me some more? Okay, I'm going to rape you.
Yeah. But you got to know that about him first.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Because it's like he keeps hopping from prison to prison and each prison is fucking around and finding out. Because they don't know
keep
who
trying
he
to
is.
beat him.
Yeah, they keep trying to beat him.
Don't fucking touch
me. And, if anything... And, there is a little bit of cult, regardless of like the grotesqueries, and there is a little bit of a, serial killer culture behind Carl Panzram. And I think a lot of that is that fuck humanity, anarchy attitude, plus the attitude of I am who I am. It may not be who I should be, but at least I am who I am, and I'm not pretending to be anything else.
But we also need to accept that it's not his fault.
Yeah.
Like, the shit that's happened to him, he couldn't have avoided it.
Mm-hmm.
If his parents didn't do whatever it is that they did to him up until the age of 8, then chances are he could have turned out to be a completely different person.
Sure, yeah.
But, I mean, pouring boiling water, yet again, into someone's brain and stabbing them in the head until they pass out with a knife to get rid of an ear infection
feels not the way.
Tad extreme.
It is.
And you can't expect anything but a serial killer / murderer / rapist.
Absolutely.
It's cause and effect at this point.
But I will say there is the part of it, like I said before, where these are people who are like just... they not even civilized.
Sure, of course, but at some point, you still got to know right from wrong.
Yeah.
You still have to know that there's no way that this is logical.
Yeah.
That me pouring boiling hot water into this little boy's brain is going to get rid of an infection.
Yeah.
I don't even truly think you should do that shit to animals.
No, I definitely don't.
Like, I'm sure that's how his dad was used to doing it at the time, but it doesn't.
But the fact that you
necessary.
equate your son to an animal.
Right.
Is and the mom's just like there chilling.
Still
she
trying to bring
these
the farm back to life.
Yeah.
It's like, first of all, bitch, let it go.
Yeah, it's done.
Your husband's gone. The
go
goats
work in
are
a
gone.
general
The
store.
chickens are gone.
Yeah.
Go work at Trader Joe's.
Yeah, facts. Okay, so anyway, so he decides that he wants to poison the water supply. But after sobering up, he ran into a Navy captain and demanded to be enlisted. He was like, I want to be a part of it. So
I want to be where the men go.
Exactly. So first day, he showed up too drunk and he was kicked off the boat. This reminded him of his beef with William Taft. By 1920, Taft had already been president, but he was now teaching law at Yale in New Haven, Connecticut. Such a beautiful city, by the way. But Carl broke into Taft's home. He ransacked it, and then he robbed Taft of his pistol. His goal was that every time he killed someone with it, the murder would be on Taft's hands.
Ew.
So he bailed again and left Connecticut, heading back to New York. He sold what he could. He got $3,000 and some ammo for what he stole, which was probably actually worth $10,000. But in New York, he was using this name, John O'Leary, and decided to buy a yacht to sail up the East Coast and rob boats docked there.
Big goals, big dreams.
Back in Manhattan, he claimed to be looking for sailors to help him sail his new boat. And he would, of course, attack and rape them. And after that, he would shoot them and dump them overboard. He did this for 3 weeks straight. He killed at least 10 sailors. And one time he got 2 at once. But by 1920, he got caught in a storm and his boat flooded in Atlantic City, New Jersey. The 2 sailors survived. These were Carl's only survivors. He lost Taft's pistol, which really pissed him off. And he was arrested in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and he spent 6 months in jail. By 1921, Carl would catch a ship to Luanda, South Africa.
Oh, God.
Yes, we're hopping continents. During this time, he was a foreman for an oil rig in Angola.
See, this is what I mean.
He got another job.
He just keep getting jobs.
He then woke up one morning and decided that his gay antics weren't going to work for him, so he needed to find himself a virgin. He paid a resident of Angola for his 11-year-old daughter. He paid her $8. He raped her the entire night. He then didn't believe that she was a virgin, so he took her back to her family and he asked for the 8-year-old.
What?
He raped her the entire night.
What?
Brought her back, and he didn't think that she was a virgin either, which I'm like, no, nigga, you're gay. You keep raping. So the 11-year-old and 8-year-old is a fucking virgin, and the only woman that you've ever raped has gonorrhea. No, you're gay.
But also,
then stop denying
after
yourself.
You rape them, no, they're not virgins.
No,
anymore.
they're not
They've
virgin
been
anymore.
raped. So it's kind
Sick
of late for
bitch.
that decision.
Yeah, he's sick. Well, there was a teenage boy. He was the son of one of the oil workers. Carl treated him like a savage. The boy still figured Carl's treatment was no worse than any other white man he had ever encountered. So he stuck around. Carl and him, they would like sit and drink and have conversation. And the boy had figured that this was a white man that was teaching him English, except Carl was talking to the boy about sodomy. He raped the boy, but the boy reported Carl. And they just felt like, this is a lot. We're hearing about you raping all these people. Like, this is a lot. So they fired him.
Not got him arrested. Not got him help or medical treatment.
No, he
got fired.
He got fired.
You can no longer be a foreman.
Carl punched his supervisor in the face and beat the shit out of him so bad that his supervisor ended up in a coma.
Period.
Carl fled but had nowhere to go. He for damn sure couldn't go back to America. That motherfucker got warrants. And he went back to Luanda and he set up tent because now he's kind of like a homeless person. This is where he was found by a child. The child would be brutally raped by Carl, and he pounded the kid's head on a rock, and he was coming while he did it. Murder and rape was his new obsession. Quote, his brains were coming out of his ears when I left him, and he will never be any deader.
I don't think deader's a word.
No, it isn't.
But also, you're sick.
He also had boiling water in his brain.
Sicko.
There's that. He made it back to the oil rig site and, you guessed it, set it on fire. It took 3 hours to fight the fire. The entire rig was basically destroyed, and a tenth of the product that they pulled was destroyed. He fled to Libido Bay. I didn't even look up why this was called Libido Bay. I don't care.
Sounds like Viagra.
Yeah, Viagra Triangle. It's here where Carl is getting a little restless. So he hears about crocodile hunting and how there's this hustle where a group of 6 locals would take people into their areas to find crocodiles. When they led Carl out there, he raped all 6 men.
Jesus.
With only 30 minutes in between each rape, and then he shot each one of them and threw them to the crocodiles. So imagine the local surprise when Carl comes back into port without the 6 men that he left with. They're like, so they took you out there to help you find crocodiles and you came back with none of them. They were very suspicious of Carl, but the last thing they needed was to kill a white man because they didn't want to deal with the colonizers. So he slivered off to Portugal, but the police were on his ass. So he tried to run to the consulate so he could be granted safe passage back to America.
He gonna finesse, though. One thing about Carl, he'll finesse.
He gonna finesse. Word had gotten around that he found this British fleet. They were not fucking with him. They were like, this dude is uncivilized. And they chained him, flogged him, refused to feed him. So he had to feed on rats. Carl was just finding himself on boat to boat trying to get back home. By 1922, he was back in New York. He was trying to steal another goddamn yacht. He went to Providence, Rhode Island, then to Boston, then off to Connecticut, where he was attempting to buy a silencer. Now, this is one of the first times that silencers were ever a thing.
Silencer?
He did buy the silencer, but then he didn't like it because it wasn't that silent. He was like, this is a piece of shit. So he headed to Salem, Massachusetts, where he ran into George Henry McMahon. Now, George lived not too far from where Carl had landed when he arrived. He was 11 and was talking to Carl and telling this man his whole life story. Carl offered him 50 cents, which wasn't bad in those days. And he took him to a deserted location and he said, quote, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to sodomize you until you die. I'm going to smash your skull until your brains leak out of your ears.
The fear. I would honestly, I think I would just pass out. Like, by the time he finished listing everything, well, it couldn't be me as a woman because Carl is obviously not into women.
He ain't into you. You got gonorrhea.
He would probably not be into black women or black men. So,
yeah,
like, me as like a Caucasian man,
yeah,
I would probably pass out.
Yeah.
Like, clutch pearls and pass out.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, you just listed the entire way that you're going to kill me. And I don't really know how to feel about it.
Yeah. Which, you know what? Which made me think about, do you remember the story I told you about that dude that I ran into on the Green Line?
Which dude?
Okay. This is going to be a long episode, but that's okay. So there was this so at the time, this was like that 2010, 2011 era. I wish you were your age then because Chicago was different.
Was this the creepy dude on the train?
Yes. So this is that 2010, 2011 era where like I was broke and I was back in Chicago and I had like every day I was getting allowance from my friend's dad. Or every week, every month, I was getting allowance from my friend's dad who was trying to help us be a filmmaker. And we were always trying to find cheap places to go out to eat.
This is why you should pay your creatives.
Yeah. $5, dollar beer night, $5 burger night. You know what I mean? Shit like that. And so at the time I was living with my grandmother, we ended up going out that night. I was getting in late, and my granny was one of those people, like, she would stay up late. So her staying up late, she would be like, well, just let me know when you get to the Green Line on 63rd and Ashland, and I will pick you up. And I was like, okay, cool. So she came, I didn't call her this time because I was like coming in super duper late, but I was like not late. It wasn't as late as I felt like you know what I mean? Like as I felt like it needed to be in order to call her. It was like late enough. Like I wasn't going to miss a bus. So I think it was like maybe a couple hours before the Ashland bus stopped running. I take the Green Line to 63rd and Ashland. I'm supposed to be taking the Ashland bus headed south. And while I'm up there, it's an elevated platform. There's a white guy up there. Now, mind you, Inglewood is like 99% black, probably 40% Mexican at this point, but it had like a pretty hefty black population. So just like random white people being around, typically you're thinking either they're buying drugs, they're looking for hoes, you know what I mean? Something is up. That's not an environment they're usually in. So I'm on the Green Line I'm at the elevated platform. I'm just going to wait until the bus comes. And then I'm going to go downstairs because I don't want to be on the ground level by myself. At least the elevated track is still lit. There's still lights on. White dude comes up to me dressed 100% out of Hot Topic. And he asked me like, oh, how are you? Woo, woo. At first I thought he was a dick. A dick is a detective. I thought he was a cop. So at first I was like, okay, maybe he's a cop. And then I was like, well, he's a little young for a cop. So he's like talking to me. I don't remember what he says. And then he says something like, I'm the angel of death.
Chris Angel. Down through the britches and burn through the back and down in the back of my
Dracula! Swing through the britches and burn through the witches and slap.
If you work out, listen to that
Rob
while
Zombie?
You're doing chin-ups.
Is it Rob Zombie?
Yes, it is Rob Zombie. And it's called Dragula. Dragula.
Yeah.
Listen to it on arm day.
Yep.
You will throw so many weights through the fucking windows. You'll come out Arnold Schwarzenegger. For sure. Pinky promise.
For sure. That metalhead shit, that fucking demon shit that they be on, like, yo, that should be wild. I like Dragula, though. That's one of my favorite. That's one of my favorite such a good rock songs.
I only learned it because of The Matrix.
Yeah, for sure.
Shout out to Lily Wachowski.
Yeah, for sure.
But
Lily Wachowski.
That's such a good fucking song.
And you know what? But when they did the next one, I've been listening to White Rabbit a lot. One makes you more something, and the other makes you small. That shit. Woo! They put that on the new Matrix trailer, and it's been on repeat.
Wait, what new Matrix trailer?
You know, that last crappy one that they did.
I watch that.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
I turned it on and made it through 20, 30 minutes.
Kirrah knows the Wachowski. No disrespect to them. I
don't think Lily did that one.
Lily didn't. I think it was just Lana.
Yeah, I don't know Lana.
Yeah.
I love Lily.
Wait, I thought you knew Lana.
I don't know Lana.
Okay.
I know Lily.
Yeah.
Lily's my girl.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shout out to Lily.
I mean, I fuck with her because you fuck with her. I don't really know her.
She's sweet as fuck. Lily has gotten me drunk before.
Yeah, for sure. That was when you ended up in the office and you were like in the Morpheus chair and you didn't even fucking know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because their production office is surrounded by
all the Matrix shit
from the Matrix and all of the fucking awards they won in the original Morpheus chair. Mm-hmm. And I sent the picture to my uncle. He goes, "That's the chair from the Matrix." I was like, "Oh." She
didn't even know. This bitch drunk in like Lawrence Fishburne's chair.
I like to stay humble. Says
like,
no Sagittarius ever.
This is comfy.
This is a nice chair.
This
is nice.
Is this tufted?
Is this alpaca?
Is this tufted? Okay, let me finish this. How many pages I got left? I got 3. Okay. So he basically tells this kid that he's gonna kill him. And he's going to bash his head in. George was fucking confused because George was like, yo, I don't even have the vocabulary to really understand what the fuck you just said to me. You know what I mean? Because this isn't the age of like Eli Roth. Like, it's not like a kid understands that shit. A kid is thinking that everything, the worst possible thing that could ever happen to anybody is like what happened to Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz.
Which is so cute.
I know. It's precious.
It's so
but
cute.
then at the same time.
Realistic, but cute.
Yeah. But, you know, it sucks too because so many kids were in this environment because they were so many kids ended up in this situation because they were in so many environments where they should not have been there in the first place. Like, why is there kids always drinking with Carl Panzram?
I mean, the same reason why Carl Panzram was always drinking with adults. Old men.
Well, but the thing is Carl Panzram was also drinking with adults because he was like living a transient lifestyle. Some of these kids are just like running into Carl and being like, you look like somebody I should talk to. And then they end up murdered. And it's kind of the same thing that happened with Albert Fish, where it was like everybody was assuming that because he was like an elderly gentleman that he couldn't have been a murdering psychopath anyway.
Which, I'm sorry, every time someone described Albert Fish to me, it gave creepy.
Yeah.
So I don't really know why no one else found him creepy but me.
Yeah.
But it's like, just like Carl, it doesn't sound like anyone that should truly be trusted.
No, for sure. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. Carl was like this mugshot. Like he was kind of fine.
He's living dead in the eyes.
Well, of course, because he doesn't have a soul. But if you if you don't really pay attention to
now we know what her type is.
I don't know if you know, but I'm out here. I'm looking for somebody who doesn't have a soul.
Cut the cameras, dead ass.
No, but like no, his eyes, yes, but I'm just saying, like feature wise, he has a very handsome face.
A fucking red bone.
Yeah,
he was 6'3" and 200 pounds. That's I love a big back motherfucker.
But not feeling like you won't play right. I used to know.
You should. The direct eye contact is truly what's killing me. Wow. That was terrifying because I didn't really know what was happening right there.
Because she said red bone, and in my head, like,
while we're talking about this serial killer, murderer, rapist. Sick.
RTR, bro.
Sick.
RTR. Read the fucking room.
Read the fucking room.
No, I agree. I think that Carl was handsome. But what I'm saying is I could see here's the bigger issue. The bigger issue is the fact that Carl Panzram is a psychopath. And what we know about psychopaths is that psychopaths are very good at being charmers. That's what makes, when you're in that relationship with that chronic manipulator that ends up fucking beating your ass, that's where that's coming from.
Yeah.
That's where I was going with that. No, but like I think that he probably could turn on the charm to get what he wanted at some point. Because especially when you start kicking into that survivalist mentality, where it's very doggy dog.
It don't sound like he had any other personality traits besides charm.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly. I think he didn't really have
his other personality trait was the fact that he was a very good fucking liar.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Where he could probably make people feel comfortable.
But that was because he was manipulative.
Yeah, exactly. He's a psychopath.
How come psychopaths get that trait? How come they get to be manipulative and it's okay?
Because they need it.
So do I.
They need it to survive. Like
what about me?
No, you don't need manipulation.
I am manipulative. I'm a Sagittarius.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's a little manipulative, but I think that Carl was so very survival based that he basically started to do it it became second nature. It was like, I must manipulate to get what I need.
I mean, well, that's how he basically lived.
That's how he survived.
He was a robber.
Yeah.
Not to mention the amount of times he broke in and out of prison. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with y'all?
And he broke in hundreds of buttholes. So. Moving on. So.
Mamma mia.
Mamma mia. So he raped him for 3 hours, but he bashed his head in on a rock.
Who is this? The little boy?
This is George, yeah. He stuffed magazine papers down his throat. Now, most people were like, the fuck? Carl wasn't an idiot, though, because he started to realize that the best way to not get caught is for every murder to have something about it that's like a little bit different. So he started to, in a way, think about profiling because he knew that there, over time, if he started to do the same thing, that it would end up being an issue, that they were going to find him. It was going to be tracked back to him. Now, he was spotted leaving the area. He was looking panicked. The murder was national news, but Carl got away with it. No one could really identify anyone to even suspect that it was Carl. And he made it back to New York again. And by 1923, he had a job as a night watchman for a mill company in Yonkers. This is where he is now back as the name John O'Leary. This is the second time in a year that Carl has had a real place to live. Like this was kind of in a job that was like constant enough where he'd have an apartment. He would meet a teenage boy at the mill. His name was also George, but his name was George Wallison. He was 15 years old. They would drink and smoke together. But over time, he ended up actually wanting George. He would try to rape the boy, but the boy was more than happy to have sex with Carl. So he didn't really have to. He was like,
I know that's right. He said,
got
you
to
fine.
take it,
All you had to do was ask. Just ask me.
They would continue to sleep together because Carl had fallen for George. George was very nice to him. Carl, for the first time, was almost in a romantic relationship. Aww. Carl did not know what to do with this. He had never had feelings like that before. His lifestyle was not fertile ground for love and commitment, though. So he was kind of worried about how this was going to all turn out. It sounds like what I was just talking about today.
I'll have to stop robbing people. How will I live?
So Carl would quit the mill and he wanted to hit the waters again because Carl had this thing about wanting to kind of be a sailor. And so he decided, you know what? I'm going to hit the waters. I can't kill you because that's what I usually would do. So what I'm going to do...
Because I like you.
I like you. I want you to be alive. So he knew there was kind of no future in it, but what they decided to do was make a pact. Carl would come back for him once he got on his feet. Carl could not be in one place for too long. He had too many warrants. He didn't want to have to explain what he had done to George. This was like the first time...
I immediately thought of on the mouth where he's like, tell any of them I won't be home this Christmas.
I mean, but this is the first time where George legitimately felt like, yo, I really fuck with George. Now, when Carl hit the road, times were obviously changing. The railroad companies were more organized. They weren't as easy to travel on. There were no longer Yegs and Angelinas, and the transient community was a bit more under control. Mind you, Carl is still outside looking for another boat. He like, yo, I need another yacht. So he just stole one. He got the paper forged to match the original boat that he had. But the purpose of the boat was so he could hit waterfront properties, load the boat, and then head to the next location. He eventually got the bright idea of just robbing boats. He was like, yo, you could just actually just rob the boats of rich people. And because they don't live anywhere near where the boat is parked, they would never find out. He didn't need a crew for the job either. So eventually he did end up going back up the coast to pick up George. George told his family that he got a job on a boat. George was struggling, though, with the seas because he had terrible seasickness. And one day they brought a man on board who pretended to want to buy Carl's boat, but really he wanted to steal it. Well, the guy fucked around and found out because Carl shot him in the head and threw him overboard.
I protect what's mine.
Mind you, this was a stolen gun. Apparently, Carl had stolen a gun from like a police commissioner from a boat. Like it was like a police commissioner's boat. He stole that gun and that's what he shot this dude with. George realized that this is who the fuck Carl really is. And Carl told George, quote, it's either him or us. And I like us better.
Okay.
It's kind of sexy.
Yeah. I'm like, okay,
look,
I'm into it.
George was so terrified that he jumped overboard while Carl was off stealing fishing nets and swam to the nearest port to notify the police.
Oh,
George
didn't go how we thought it would.
No. George gave up all the information and lied, saying that he was actually on the boat under false pretenses and that Carl had been raping him. Now, here's the issue with this, is that because this is also from a perspective of Carl, part of me was like, did this really happen? Did he fall for a boy and then like hold him captive? Or was this one of those situations where it was like a gay boy who was like, oh, an older man. He looked like he got a little bit of something. He got a boat. I'm going to go. You know what I'm saying? But then...
I hope you said it just like that, if that is the case. He looked like he got a little something. He got a boat. I'm going to
go. So Carl was fucking devastated. He was betrayed. The only reason why I think it's real is because Carl was actually betrayed. Because he ain't never seemed like he was betrayed by shit else in the 30 years he's been on this earth.
A little sad.
Carl was really into George. The police found him in Nyack, New York. He was charged with sodomy, robbery, and burglary. You're probably asking, why was he charged with murder? Well, that was because the person that he allegedly murdered was a John Doe. It's kind of like, we don't even know who the fuck that dude was. So no face, no case.
Not important.
He attempted to escape from jail once he was arrested, though, and was caught and thrown into the hole, even though there were 5 other co-conspirators. Carl's bail was set for $5,000, which he didn't have, even though he claimed that all his money was tied up in a bank in California. But what he did tell his attorney is that, I have a boat. My boat is the only asset that I have on the East Coast. So Carl made a deal with his attorney that he would offer his yacht that was worth $10,000 in exchange for the lawyer to pay his bail. Carl was free again, but when the lawyer went to go register the boat with the Port Authority, he found that the yacht didn't match the papers and the boat had been forged. The papers had been forged, so the boat was seized. The boat was stolen, and when he came back to find Carl was already gone. Yonkers police couldn't help and thought that the whole fucking ordeal was hilarious because he was outsmarted by his own client. He would get picked up in Larchmont, New York, trying to rob a train depot. His hope was to buy another yacht and head to South America. Carl gave in to the police eventually, and he was just fucking tired. His boat was crashed. He had to swim ashore once. Not to mention, he was still brokenhearted about George. He could not fucking believe that he did that to him. He was sentenced to 5 years with $5,000 bail, and he figured he needed to get the hell out of New York because if he stood trial, they would find way more shit to pin on him. So he needed to go to...
I can't risk it.
I can't risk it. So he's like, I need to go to a state where I have a lesser sentence to serve. Well, he had cases in Oregon, so he confessed to murdering a policeman in Oregon under the name Jeff Baldwin. He dodged a 17-year sentence. He was like, yo, I actually dodged a 17-year sentence. So they were kind of starting to think that Carl was just one of those people that would like admit to shit that he didn't do. They were like, why is he
He's like, yeah, I did that shit. Whatever, let's get this on with.
So they reached out to Oregon and figured out that Carl was the person that they were looking for. The description of his attitude and demeanor, because even though he had like a handlebar mustache and shit now, and he had like all these new tattoos and shit, they were like, based on his personality, it sounds like the person that we need. So they sent him to Oregon. Carl even tried to claim the reward. He was like, bitch, you wouldn't even know if it was me if I didn't tell you. So
I gave me to you.
You know where he went? You know where he went next? He went to Sing Sing. Sing Sing Geddes!
Sicko.
If you don't know that, that's from Citizen Kane. So
Sicko.
You probably don't. There's a scene where Orson Welles is like, Sing Sing Geddes!
I'm sure one day you'll learn about how she went on the rampage and fucking watched Citizen Kane every day for like 3 months.
3 months? Was that it?
I don't know. Shit, it felt like longer, 3 years. I'm sure.
All right. So he was a demon in Sing Sing. Nobody tried him. He was transferred to Clinton Prison, which was Dannemora in New York. He was beaten as usual. But at this point, he was so delirious that he accidentally gave his real name. He was like, yo, I'm fucking Carl Panzram, Joe.
He said,
Carl Panzram. So he fit right in. He tried to burn the whole place down though. And they disarmed the bar and, the bar. They disarmed I'm clearly drunk. They disarmed the bomb and he was beaten. By the third week, Carl would plan to escape. Dannemora was more like a castle than a prison, so Carl figured he'd just make a ladder and climb the wall. Well, his carpentry work wasn't that great, and as he climbed, he fell off the ladder. Carl shattered both his ankles, injured his spine, and ruptured his groin to the point where his insides were on the outside.
Ew.
He was screaming in pain. This is one of the first time Carl was actually incapacitated by pain. He was literally trying to grab his insides and put them back inside.
I can't imagine it.
He thought he was going to go to the medical facility, but they put him in solitary.
With his insides on the outside? What kind of sick joke?
The Oregon agents came to retrieve who they thought was Jeff Baldwin, but there was no one in the prison under the name. So instead of doing any work, they just kept Carl and instead continued to torture him for his prison escape. And so they scheduled the surgery to fix his groin because that was that's kind of all we can do in house. But his legs were fucked up.
Well, both of his ankles are broken.
They cut off one of his nuts just because. They figured that it would calm him down. It was kind of to be spiteful, but they also figured that it would calm him down. He was basically neutered. But they took
humans work.
But they took one. They didn't take both.
Oh, what is he going to do with the other one?
But let me tell you this. Once he got his strength, he was worried that he wouldn't be able to rape men anymore.
That was the biggest concern.
So he hopped in another patient's bed and raped him. They threw him in solitary again. He would have to crawl around because he couldn't use his legs, so he was slithering like a snake in solitary.
Okay, I give up.
When he was finally out in because he gets out after this. When he was finally out in 1928, he headed to Philly. Fuck Philly.
Oh, wow. Edit that. We'll fix it. We'll fix it in post.
We'll fix that in post.
It'll be great. Oh, yikes. We'll fix it in post.
Nobody that knows listens. I don't know. Whatever. Fuck Philly, though. So he was.
We gotta fix it in post.
The person and the place.
And it's only getting worse.
That was petty. So he was planning all these terrorist attacks. One was to collapse a road tunnel and fill the tunnel with poisonous gas and rob everybody trapped inside.
Okay. Sounds effective.
He had dreams of starting wars with Britain by sinking British battleships. So he started robbing again because he needed something that could fund his terrorist organization.
He needed to fill something.
And he was also still raping. He killed a child named Alexander Uzaki. He was 14. He threw him in the trash before heading to Baltimore. He was caught by some police for a DC burglary, and then he was jailed to await trial. He tried to escape again, but he's crippled. So at this time, that didn't really work.
Imagine the terrorism as a cripple.
He was tortured and threatened to murder and rape the guards. He started telling on himself, and that guards were so scared of him that they just beat him unconscious. They finally connected him to his other identities, but the child murders were the biggest issue. They were able to confirm that the Philly child murders sent him is actually what sent him to Leavenworth. He was never getting out. He was too crippled to bully. So he still needed to establish his dominance. So he warned the warden. This is what he said: "I will kill the first man that bothers me."
Period.
That's
me when I wake up in the morning.
He was entirely too crazy to be left alone. By 1929, Carl was definitely degrading. He beat this guard by the name of Robert Warnke, who was a little bit of a bully. He beat him to death with a pipe while he was on laundry detail. There was no more of this man's head left. He beat him so many times with his pipe that he actually started to hit the floor.
No more of his head left.
And he was laughing while he did it. He was originally sentenced to 25 years to life, but after the murder of Warnke, they sent him to death row. While he was on death row, he was convinced by an officer, Henry Philip Lesser, to write down on paper his life and crimes. And Henry Philip Lesser is also the person that started, trying to campaign to have his work published. Carl showed no signs of remorse for his crimes and he was more than happy to be put out of his misery. Carl, this is what he said, quote, "In my lifetime, I have murdered 21 human beings. I have committed thousands of burglaries, robberies, larcenies, arsons, and last but not least, I have committed sodomy on more than 1,000 male human beings. For all these things, I am not in the least bit sorry." End quote.
1,000?
He refused to hire an attorney or have any letters of clemency sent out. There had been civil rights organizations that were trying to speak up for him. He was like, "Nah, you good." And he contacted them. He started threatening to murder and rape all of them. He even sent letters to make sure that they did not stay his execution. They "Whatever you do not stop them from killing me." And on September 5th, 1930, Carl was hooded to be hanged. He spat in the executioner's face, and his last words were, quote, "Yes, hurry up, you Hoosier bastard. I could kill a dozen men while you're still screwing around."
And how old was he by this point?
39.
Oh, going out with a bang.
And that is the fucked up, terrible, terrifying life and times of Carl Panzram.
Stress, just recapping it all mentally.
I mean, we found some lightheart shit in it, but it's
that's
pretty
just
fucking terrible.
Sheer deep, dark personality.
Yeah, it's out of laughing to keep from crying. Carl Panzram, it's interesting too, because as I was looking into this is somebody who was literally a product of his environment. I think, back then there could have been some mental illness regardless, because people were uneducated and they were just, some people were just crazy. And then there was psychology wasn't a thing. Sending somebody to the crazy house was a thing, but all they did was electroshock therapy and other torture, you know what I mean? So, useless. But for him, it reminded me a little of H.H. Holmes, except I find Carl Panzram way more sadistic than H.H. Holmes. People talk about H.H. Holmes, but Carl Panzram and Albert Fish, when it comes to that generation, are two of the most sickest 19th century serial killers. I mean, that I feel like are not as famous as H.H. Holmes. I think H.H. Holmes, people get wrapped up in the murder castle and him possibly being the Grim Reaper. Jesus Christ.
Jesus.
Jack the Ripper. People get caught up in all of that. But I think, but when you think about what Carl Panzram was, H.H. Holmes in comparison was just a crook.
I mean, that's what I remember him as.
Yeah.
Honestly, this dude was shaking fucking tables starting at the age of 8.
Yeah.
You know, that's pretty intense.
It was bad for him from the beginning.
Yeah. And it never got
never got better. Yeah.
To the point where he was just
with no help of his, but when you're talking about just what probably happened to his brain, I'm not surprised.
But I also have to wonder if a lot of these crimes that he did, he was hoping that he would originally just be
caught.
Killed.
Yeah.
He's well, at some point, somebody's got to fucking stop me.
Yeah.
I think he was just cranking it up every notch just to see how far he can go.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think there was a part. I will say that what fascinates me a little bit about Carl Panzram is there's that part of him that is anarchy and rebellion where it feels a little bit like, motherfuckers, y'all gonna keep letting me do this shit?
Yeah. And yes, they will. Because they did. Because
at the end of the day, Carl Panzram is the mirror that faces humanity, where he's you realize you are as bad as I am.
Yeah.
The only difference is you're a better liar.
I mean, mostly because these people came up with different and more innovative ways to beat him every single time.
Yeah.
It's like, you're clearly just as sick as him.
Sure.
If you keep coming up with different forms of torture.
Yeah.
To inflict on this.
Yeah.
Man, instead of just like simply like the other dude did. They're like, maybe we should just let him
Maybe we should just give him
some
like a yoga day.
Like, let him decompress.
Like this, like if what you've been doing isn't working. But then there's also like the fact like his like records were not like were in their infancy, and like it wasn't like you had all these different facilities communicating with one another. I do feel like they didn't really know how to treat Carl Panzram. If there was like a streamline, you know, like a my chart for each prison where they were like, oh, by the way, Carl Panzram is our prisoner. Here's all his aliases. This is what we know. Like they had some medical, mental record, psychology record that they could follow. I mean, it's not to say that they wouldn't have done what they would have did anyway, because it seemed like all these workers were sick. But I feel like at least you would be able to say, oh, he has a history of this. So the beautiful thing about psychology is that it's created this idea of we need to keep record so we can maintain record enough so we can identify patterns, because that's how you truly treat somebody. What they do in pattern is what we diagnose, not what they do, you know, once, that one time. People make bad decisions all the time. So, but, you know, from the very beginning, I also think this is just like that man versus nature, man versus nurture thing, where it's like man versus nurture, where it's like you got all this man who was doomed also because we're at a time where parents were not conditioned to believe that their children were something that should be loved and taken care of. Mm-hmm. It was more about, I need boys, strapping young men to tend to my farm. But what's funny to me even about that is then when Matilda gets too old and her husband leaves, now you expecting somebody to take care of you. Mm-hmm. Moral of the story is treat everybody the way you expect to be treated.
Or don't have kids.
Or don't have kids. Because
you suck.
Yeah.
At having kids.
Exactly.
Don't do it.
Nope.
Ill-advised.
Yep. Birth control.
Every day.
So this is episode 15. This is called Panzram. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm fucked up. You know?
I'm going in for another shot.
I'm going to give me another shot, another slice of pizza.
I know that's fucking right.
And my Manifest app just said, parenthood has made me stronger and wiser.
They're like, let's report to this hoe, because clearly she got some shit going on. Let's talk.
So I hope you learned something. If you didn't, it's cool.
If you didn't from this episode, you also are a serial killer. I don't know what the fuck y'all got going on, but tighten up. Shit, making me mad.
This motherfucker killed. He created chaos for 40 years straight. You ain't learned nothing.
You ain't learned nothing. I don't know. You ain't gonna never learn nothing. You need to be put away.
If you don't understand this, you don't understand English.
You don't understand anything. Put yourself away right now. Like, close your laptop. Put yourself away.
Exactly. And yeah.
And we won't judge.
So we have Kirrah here.
Yay.
And she made it. She's on Instagram. You can follow her if you're one of those people.
Naomi Ballhead. Like Naomi Campbell, but bald head.
Bald head.
Underscore.
And I'm Lavender and underscore. And I'm Lavender and Bordeaux. No ampersand and spelled. Stream. Wait, what? No. At Swear to Drunk Podcast. This is what happens when you actually make it to the episode drunk. I very rarely make it to the episode drunk, but sometimes when I vibe with other people, it's like being at dinner. So I just keep drinking until
sounds refreshing.
Yeah, mind you, it's like 5:40. So this was great.
I'm unemployed due to
feel like we should go to Money Gun after this. Be like, what are you doing at Money Gun? All right, y'all. I hope, you know, everything was great. I hope y'all been kicking it. We're fucked up on Hennessy Pure White. Fuck Philly. And yeah, we're all good. And I hope you have a great day. I hope, you know, whatever.
And that's what it's like to be a member of our family. I hope you have a great whatever. That's what it's like.
All right,
in
y'all.
case you were wondering.
Kirrah's out. I'm out.
Bye.
Bye.